Ethereum is fundamentally broken. It's way too slow for mass adoption. Nobody's ever going to pay its high transaction fees. And the Ethereum merge didn't do anything to fix this problem. At least that's what Ethereum's biggest critics will tell you. But what they don't tell you is Ethereum has a clear path forward for 100x scalability and beyond very soon. And in this video, I want to talk about just one path that can help it achieve this. I would talk about exactly what you must know as a blockchain developer myself who works with this technology on a daily basis. And I'm also going to tell you about a potential opportunity to get some free cryptocurrency with this knowledge that you'll have as an edge. So before we get into that, if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to learn how to become a blockchain master step-by-step start to finish, then head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. All right, so let's get into this. Let's talk about Ethereum's path forward to 100x scalability and how a big inflection point for this could be right around the corner. Okay, so again, Ethereum's biggest criticism is that it's too slow, it's too expensive to use for most people, that the merge didn't fix any of this. Well, the merge was never going to fix this, but we have a path forward with layer 2 scaling solutions, which for quite some time has been the long-term path for Ethereum scalability moving forward. And we have a new player coming out in just a few days at the time of recording this video called ZK Sync, which is a zero knowledge-based scaling solution that holds a ton of promise to fix this problem. And so I'm going to break all that down in this video, when this is coming out, how you could potentially get some free crypto from this, how exactly it works under the hood, because it's really important to understand. I'll demystify the whole thing and, why do we care about it in the first place? So first of all, just clarifying what a layer 2 scaling solution is in the first place. Again, this is Ethereum's long-term scaling solution where you create a second environment outside of Ethereum that works kind of like a blockchain, but it actually is secured by Ethereum itself. And you can see lots of different examples of this on a website like L2Beat.com. Some really popular ones right now are Arbitrum and Optimism, which have gained a lot of adoption. And ZK Sync is the one I want to talk about today, which is fundamentally different from these two. So I'll highlight the differences here in a second, but let's just kind of get a diagram of how this works. So, how do you actually scale a blockchain with a layer 2? Because I think this is an interesting thing to understand. Which is basically, you can scale a blockchain multiple different ways. Different people have tried this where you could fork a blockchain and just increase the block size, okay, to add more transactions. But that has a lot of issues with, security of the chain itself and also decentralization. But let's talk about Ethereum's solution for this. So essentially, every time you make a transaction on top of Ethereum, let's say you're sending cryptocurrency from one account to another, or you're swapping a token on Uniswap, and you click confirm with your MetaMask wallet and do that, and that's a transaction, okay? And then all the different transactions on the blockchain, anytime somebody does this, those transactions are grouped together into chunks, okay? And those groups of transactions are stored inside of blocks, and those blocks are chained together to make it the blockchain. So you can see an example here. Let's say that all these transactions were here. Transaction 1, 2, 3 are grouped into this particular block, and this is chained to another one to make the chain. And you can see how this works by opening up a block explorer like Etherscan. Just go to the home page, click on any random block here. These are the most recent ones mined, or validated, I should say, in this case. And you can see, you can actually click on the transactions themselves right here, and then you can see all the different transactions and what they do. This is a good way to visualize this yourself. But this right here is the central bottleneck for scaling. You can only fit so many transactions into a block because there's a limitation on how much data you can actually add to each block, okay? So how would you scale this 100x? How could you process 100 more transactions per second? Well, again, like I said before, you could fork the chain and then increase the block size, but that's going to give you more problems down the road. But let's talk about how a layer 2 scaling solution would work. So essentially, like I was saying before, it creates a second environment where you can do transactions, and then you batch those transactions, okay, into what's called a rollup, and then you can essentially have a reference for that rollup that gets stored on the chain itself. So if you look at this model I showed you a second ago, you have transaction 1, 2, 3. Well, how could you easily 100x scale this? Well, you could take 100 transactions on a different environment and then group them together into a bundle and then post a reference to that bundle that it actually valid, all those transactions are correct, onto a single transaction. And that's a way that you could essentially store information about 100 transactions into a single transaction back on the base chain and achieve 100x scalability. Now, these aren't the exact numbers for every single layer 2 scaling solution, but this is a rough example about how that actually works. Now, the devil's in the details because this is not exactly how all layer 2 scaling solutions work. All right, so let's look at some of the key players and let's talk about the one I want to focus on today, which is ZK Sync. We got main ones like Arbitrum, Optimism, other scaling solutions out there, okay? But the reason I want to focus on zero knowledge-based solutions is because the community is pretty aligned that these are the end game for Ethereum scaling. We've got Vitalik himself, the mastermind behind Ethereum, talking about how zero knowledge rollup solutions are favored in the long term, and they have significant advantages over current solutions with optimistic rollups. And we even have people who are building optimistic rollup solutions right now also building zero knowledge-based solutions because they're making a big bet on that in the future. All right, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty. How do these ZK rollups work versus the other ones, and why would you care about these more than the other ones in the first place? So let's talk about the benefit first. So essentially, other optimistic solutions are going to give you transaction finality, all right, basically instantly whenever you process a transaction, but it's doing it in an optimistic way where it essentially assumes the validity of a transaction until it's later contested. So this has some side effects, like you can't really withdraw your funds off of an optimistic rollup solution for like 7 days, depending on the solution, okay? But with things like zero knowledge proofs and ZK rollups, the transaction finality is guaranteed with cryptography, okay? So you don't have to do things like wait to withdraw your funds. We have proof that everything's valid, essentially in real time. That's one of the big benefits. And so how does it achieve this benefit? Okay, so let's look at the technology underneath this, which is zero knowledge cryptography. Okay, so let's talk about what a zero knowledge proof is, because that's at the heart of how this works. Okay, so what on earth is a zero knowledge proof? Well, let's take an analogy. So it's really about proving that information is valid without revealing the information itself. So one of the classic examples of this is like a Where's Waldo image. All right, so if I gave you this Where's Waldo image and I said, hey, find Waldo in this picture and prove to me that you found Waldo, but don't reveal Waldo's location. Well, what you could do is you could just crop out a picture of Waldo, from this image and then give that back to me. And that proves that you found Waldo, but you didn't tell me like where he was. Okay, so that's an example of zero knowledge proof. And this has all kinds of applications in blockchain. Like you could prove your age without revealing your age if you had to, verify your age for something. Let's say you're going to purchase a home and they wanted to verify your income to debt ratio. They could verify that it's valid without knowing what your income or what your assets are worth. Okay, all kinds of applications of this. But how does it work with blockchain scaling? Well, really what it's about is proving that knowledge or proving that certain information is valid without giving you all of the knowledge, because that reduces the amount of space that you have to store inside of a transaction. So what does that mean? So let's go back to our diagram here. Remember I was showing that you could essentially put 100 transactions into a single transaction. That's not the exact math here, but just as an example. Well, one way you can do this is essentially you can get all the transaction information and prove that the transactions are valid without getting all of the transaction information itself. And that allows you to store the data into a smaller footprint. And that's at the heart of scalability, is storing more information into a smaller amount of space, or in this case, the validity of a large amount of information to a smaller footprint. That's how you achieve the scalability. And so that's how the ZK Sync solution works, which is going live in just a few days at the time of recording this video. Okay, so this is going to be on October 28th. That's at least the announced date here. Okay, there could be some flexibility on that, but it's coming out very soon. All right. And so that's the huge edge that it has. Again, you have instant transaction finality, basically. Okay. You can get this fast scalability, okay? And also, it's going to be EVM compatible. That's what the whole ZK EVM is. So one of the drawbacks to zero knowledge-based scaling solutions prior to this is that in many cases, you had to essentially write your programs in some proprietary implementation, where in this case, it's EVM compatible. So what does that mean? It means that if you can write code for Ethereum, you could just take that code and move it to the layer 2. So if you write it in Solidity for Ethereum, you can write Solidity code and just take your programs and put them on a layer 2 scaling solution like this, okay, without, really any significant changes, okay? And that's huge, because that means that you can bootstrap an ecosystem really fast. Again, blockchains, what gives them their value is their network effect. Like, how many cryptocurrencies can you use on this network? How many different exchanges can you use? Do they all talk to one another? It's like a social network. You don't want to get on a social network if there's no people for you to interact with. Similarly, you don't want to get on a blockchain if there's no counterparties for you to trade with. There's no apps for you to use or anything like that. And that's EVM compatibility makes this particular solution something that you can, get a network up and running really fast. All right, so let's talk about the possibility to get some free cryptocurrency out of this, okay? So, everybody always wonders whenever these projects launch, like, are there going to be cryptos associated with this? And if you look at ZK Sync's own website here, their documentation, there's just a Q&A that says, will ZK Sync have a token? So they just say yes, period, like no much more explanation beyond that. How and can I get the token? So basically, we don't have any updates on that. If you want to look into that, you can look in their Discord, Telegram, and Twitter. Okay, so how a token works. So basically, when ZK Sync becomes fully decentralized, the token will be used for staking in order to become a validator in the ZK Sync networks, and more details to come. So there's not a ton of details here, all right, but how could you potentially get some of these tokens for free? All right, so we've seen lots of different projects airdrop their tokens to early participants. Okay, this has been a huge thing in the crypto space. Other layer 2 scaling solutions have done this, like Optimism. Okay, essentially, the whole idea here is using the products. So essentially getting on the layer 2, making transactions early before they actually announce the token airdrop so that you could potentially be considered for this. Now, we don't have clarity on exactly what the criteria is, but how could you increase the likelihood that you could be eligible for this? Well, at a minimum, it's going to look like bridging over and using the layer 2 itself, just making some simple transactions. If you want to increase the likelihood that you would get this, again, you want to do transactions across multiple days, okay? Maybe using multiple different applications in the space. All right, that's going to increase the likelihood that you would be included in the snapshot for one of these airdrops. And I don't exactly know when this would be announced in the future, or if indeed it will be an airdrop, but it's one of those things where it's not that expensive for you to do. It's basically free. It's very cheap in time as well. So the downside is minimal, but the upside is potentially big. All right, so that's an overview of how Ethereum can scale with ZK Sync. Again, ZK Sync 2.0 is coming out very soon. This is a huge deal. This is how it works and why it matters and how you can potentially get some free crypto out of this opportunity. So I hope you like this video. As always, smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. That really helps this videos out so the more people learn about blockchain. And if you're as fast at this technology as I am, you want to get your hands dirty, how can you get started today? Well, you can go to my YouTube homepage. You can find my free courses there. They're like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. And if you like those and you went to the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master shortcut entirely, I can show you how to master blockchain step-by-step start to finish over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. You guys be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real-world blockchain developers in a matter of months. So that's all I've got. And until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.